talking about Rahu entering Gemini, also analyzing the last two shifts of the nodes through Leo and then through Cancer, also talking about how to analyze transits in a general sense. So I'm talking about Rahu moving into Gemini in March of 2019, March 23rd, 2019. You see that Rahu will enter Gemini, and he's going to be there for the next year and a half or so. And I'm going to talk about the last couple of transits of Rahu as he went through Cancer, and then before that as he went through Leo. And of course, Rahu on one end of the node puts Ketu on the other end. So these transits of Rahu and Ketu through different astrology signs truly affects our world, interactions globally and culturally, and also, of course, personally. And, I talk about these things all the time, very often when I do my updates, especially the current event updates. I keep that larger perspective of where the nodes are. This is something that's really important with any kind of prediction that you do with your clients, or just understanding your life and the different life cycles. And so, this is all part of what you would call doing transit work, and the transits, which is part of prediction and Vedic astrology. I'm doing a very important class on making predictions using astrology transits, using the transits, really focusing on them, where I'm going to go deeply into these things, and you can click the link there and register for that. I'm also going to be doing a free in-depth webinar on Rahu in Gemini, and there's also a link here for that. That's free for everyone. And it'll be more than an hour. I'll also talk about Rahu for each of the 12 signs and some special kind of inside stuff on that free Rahu in Gemini, Ketu and Sagittarius webinar. So I'll be doing case studies of previous Rahu, Gemini, Ketu, Sagittarius transits and other kinds of things like that. So again, you want to understand that, particularly wherever the nodes are in the sky, it shows very intense cultural and, of course, as I say, personal shifts as well. And of course, the personal shifts first revolve around the nature of the sign, which I'm going to talk about in this video more. But then as it relates to your chart, for example, it's going to show up along a house axis. Like, for example, Rahu is now moving out of Cancer and Ketu in Capricorn. So wherever Ketu and Capricorn fall in your chart, just in general, there's going to be an emphasis on that house axis. Usually, I would say almost always, Rahu is the more active end of the node. We can definitely see this, culturally and globally, as I'm going to discuss. But of course, if you have a bunch of planets, let's say you have a bunch of planets in Capricorn, then the transit of Ketu, this recent transit of Ketu through Capricorn, might be more active for you because you have several more planets there. So, like if your Ascendant is Capricorn as well, it might be more influential, or you have the Moon in Capricorn. So it's subjective, but one thing that we can say almost for certain is that the Rahu end of the node is going to be more active, to be ascending and bringing a kind of external focus and almost obsession. So this obsessive focus really accelerates a level of karma around that energy. So, for example, I'll go back a couple years. Here is when Rahu went through Leo. So, of course, this is based on the sidereal zodiac. And by the way, those who wonder about zodiacs, is Vedic, tropical, or sidereal, or whatever, of course, it's in all the Vedic astrology texts. And sometimes I hear people say, well, let's have case studies. Why don't you do case studies? My channel is nothing but case studies, and I've been doing nothing but case studies about these things for years. And you'll see this is another example of case studies when the nodes change signs. Again, I did it when the nodes went through Virgo. I did it when the nodes, when Rahu went through Virgo, when Rahu went through Libra. I always do it. And so again, you can go back and look. So this is one of the ways that you test the zodiac, okay? So I'm putting it on the line here. So you can see right now when from early January 2016, that's when Rahu went into Leo. Now I also use the true node, not the mean node. And you can see that from early January 2016 till like September of 2017, we had this Rahu in Leo kind of energy. Now, look at what happened during that time. There was this kind of obsession and this kind of sudden awakening of what? Like empire, nationalism. We had Brexit happened in the world. We had the election of Donald Trump, of course, a big global event. Donald Trump is a Leo even. So all this Leo energy, very easy to see that. And again, it was early 2016, which was also leading up to that election. There were no candidates yet. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Like when we're talking about that election in the US, Brexit hadn't happened either. It was just kind of, wonder what's going to happen. Well, what happened is all this, again, hyper-nationalism, this relationship to, again, you know, empire and even like a hyper-masculinized way of life, which includes, again, strong men, leaders like even Erdogan and Putin and, of course, Trump and even Kim Jong-un, dictators, nationalistic stuff. Huge during that time, right? You could say that it's continued, it's still the same, but actually it really kind of shifted. Rahu, it was from January 2016 until like September 2017. This is September 13th. I actually ran it ahead a couple days because I also wanted to include Jupiter going through Libra, which happened right after Rahu went into Cancer. So early September of 2017, we had that shift. Now, again, you can just look and see what happened right after Rahu went into Cancer. Of course, I did an update at that time, and I said it's going to be a focus on the divine feminine, women, divine motherhood, getting away from that hyper masculinized patriarchal view towards something where, again, the reestablishment of female empowerment would be a big theme. What happened almost immediately right afterwards? In October, we started all this Me Too, the thing with Harvey Weinstein, and then you had all the other ones, Louis C.K. and all of the ones, huge, happened almost right away when Rahu went into Cancer. And, you know, Rahu is still in Cancer, but it sort of culminated in you know, in the U.S., we had a big election in November, and all the female all the female congresswomen that were newly elected. It's really a revival of the feminine, the female, the divine feminine in politics and whatnot. And here we're about to have U.S. presidency. And again, just look at the difference between January 2016 and all the hyper-masculine, it's going to be this kind of, you know, election or this kind of, you know, power, to what's happening right now with the election cycle starting. It's almost all women. It's like female empowerment is taken over Rahu in Cancer, right? And again, it's not just that, but that's been a huge thing. And it's not just been the U.S. and U.S. election, but female empowerment like in India, in other places as well around the world, been a big issue, okay? So again, this is Rahu going through Cancer. And again, we can often tell by the world events which, you know, how Rahu is really driving the agenda. So then we have Rahu going into Gemini. What is that? Well, again, even if we just look at world events and we look at certain things, again, you know, I live in the U.S. There's a lot, U.S. policy really drives a lot of what's happening in the world for sure. But here in the U.S., we're about to have the culmination of this big investigation that's been happening with the president and all that. But I said this a little bit earlier, not too long ago, on a summit that I did with a lot of other astrologers, that Rahu in Gemini is going to be very much about information, new ideas, you know, coming into mass consciousness, having to sift through all of the like propaganda and the what we call fake news now and all of the misinformation. We live in the age of information and the age of misinformation, right? There's all of this, uh, you know, all of this information at your disposal, but not all of it is good. In fact, there's a lot of misleading information. Again, the age of misinformation as well. So Rahu in Gemini is going to show this even more exacerbated, where one side says this, one side says that. Who knows what's true? But we're going to see a level of truth that maybe we haven't seen before, and that really shatters our previous beliefs and shatters our earlier paradigm. Because again, it's also opposite Sagittarius, for example. One of the things that I think is going to really happen that's very much indicated is issues with the church. And for example, we are seeing now the rumblings of a new level of disclosure in the Catholic Church about covering up all the crimes against young boys and all of this crazy stuff. It's going to come out even more. By the way, I said this on the web summit that I spoke at with my fellow astrologers not too long ago, that I felt this was also going to be a huge issue. One of the things is the Pope has a Gemini ascendant, so Rahu will be going through his first house. But anyway, these large cycles are very important, and when the nodes shift, you have to know that they're going to be shifting in all of your clients' lives, in your life. Of course, any planet that's in Gemini will also get transited. So again, if you have any planets in Gemini, that's going to be very important. And so what I'm going to do in the transit class that I'm going to be doing is also explaining how to read and dial in the appropriate use of the transits, but also how they work within the dashas and how they work within the regular timing cycle of Vedic astrology. So, there's a link down there for that. You should definitely check it out if you're doing any kind of astrological work. You have to have a lot of case studies to do transit work really well, because the Vedic astrology texts are actually pretty thin when it comes to doing that. But again, also, I just want to say that you want to check out the free 2019, or I'm sorry, the free webinar on this transit of Rahu and Ketu into Gemini. I'm going to go into it in great depth. Last time Rahu went through Gemini, we had 9/11 in the US. We're having some eclipses, of course, because that's one of the biggest things that happens when the nodes change signs. This means that the eclipses happen in those signs. And this summer in 2019, there's a huge eclipse in Ardra Nakshatra. I'm going to be talking about that on the web class and whatnot. So check that out. But I just want you to understand this whole dynamic of the nodal axis shifting, and you can see very clearly these these cycles etched in time very clearly, even the last few with Rahu in Leo, the rise of this sort of nationalism, the masculinized kind of dictator, empire, nationalistic bent. Then the one we're in now and the one that's finishing, Rahu through Cancer, much more of a corrective process where there's more the establishment of the divine feminine, women, trying to harmonize this like sort of me, because again, one of the things that's shown in politics, literally that kind of nationalism and tribalism is huge. So all of this tribalism and back and forth that we've been going through, now as Rahu goes into Gemini, we're going to get a lot of disclosures, a lot of information. We're going to be pitted against, we can be really pitted against each other with, I think these ideas are right, I think these ideas are right. We're going to have to use our discrimination to sift through and acknowledge and recognize the truth and adjust to it rather than just fall back on our beliefs, which is the Sagittarius principle. We all already believe what we think is right. We think it's right. We believe it, and we don't listen to anything else. So Gemini is the sign where we need to have intelligence and discrimination, and even if our favorite sacred cows get their dirty laundry aired, we need to be intelligent about it and say, yes, that's a problem, and we need to adjust. And we need to come together socially and culturally and listen to each other. Again, this is the big Gemini principle. Time to listen to each other and stop allowing ourselves to be divided, particularly by the power structures. I see it like crazy online. It's like you can't hardly ever talk about anything anymore. You can't say anything anymore that's even just neutral, even just acknowledging a fact. If somebody, the people that don't like the fact or don't like the person where you're describing the fact, then they just dump on you. Like, good Lord, can we get back to just facts? They still matter. They're still there, right? And again, everybody's so triggered and tribal, and this transit through Gemini is going to challenge us all to be able to see the truth clearly and not just react and be triggered and whatnot. So again, I'm going to go very deeply into that, show you how in recent Rahu transits through Gemini, this lesson was also learned, and talk about that sort of on a cultural level and then also on a personal level. So check that out, and I look forward to seeing you on the web class and also on the transits course. That'll be great for anyone who's studying astrology. I've made it very affordable. It's a live Zoom weekend. If you can't attend the classes in real time, then you can have the recordings archived forever. It'll be very beneficial. We always have a good crowd and a lot of participation, and it's a way to really learn about transits in real time and accelerate your ability to analyze all transits, of course, not just the nodes, but how to actually work with them properly in your life. So take care.